Hello and welcome to episode number 33. My name is Torsten Tauble, and the question for today is, what does choosing look like? So what's kind of fun about this is that a lot of times we look at choosing and in our everyday lives, we actually choose a lot. We choose consistently. We choose like constantly, actually. In every single moment in your world, basically, you choose. You're constantly choosing things, whether you're kind of aware of it or not. What's kind of cool is that there's these places where you go through your life and you really like, it's almost like committing to your life. It's almost like choosing without having a back door kind of thing. If you've ever heard anyone talk about that. But it's really where you choose and you don't have just one foot in and one foot out. Like that's kind of like a half choice, if you will, because you're not fully committed. And then when you actually decide to fully commit to something, it's very different. And I know that every one of you knows what that is like, knows what it's like to actually like choose something when you fully choose it. And it's kind of like the energy of like, no matter what, this is happening. And it's really interesting how that can show up. And so I'll use an example of just recently, I facilitated a foundation class, and it was really cool because I was looking at the energy of the class and I'm like, it doesn't really seem to have a lot of energy to it. And so then I asked some questions whether it still wanted to be, and it was a yes. And if it was me, it was a yes, and everything was a yes. So I'm like, okay, I'm choosing this class, it's happening. And sort of no matter what, who shows up or doesn't show up, this class is gonna happen. And so I think it was like 4 days before the class started, 5 days before the class started, there was 2 people in the class. And I was like, well, this is going to be interesting. It's going to be a small class. And yet for me, I was fully committed to this class. Like it was happening. And then what was interesting was within the last 3 or 4 days before the class, more people showed up. And actually a day before the class, another person chose it. So in the end, it ended up being 6 people. So it went from like 2 to 6. And what also contributed to some of the change of energy, there was a bunch of different things. One was that the host wasn't entirely committed yet either and didn't fully choose it until a little bit later. And it was also this demand, this pull in my world that it was going to happen and no matter what. And it's kind of cool, like just how things do end up showing up. And it just kind of gives an example of like, you never know exactly how it's going to show up, but when you choose it, you're like, okay, this is happening, whatever it takes, this is actually going to be actualized. Like I'm actualizing this in some sort of way. Doesn't matter how many people show up, we've got a venue, that's all set. I'm committing to this. And so how often do we do something like that we do commit to something, but we only do it once? So it's a place where you're like, okay, so I'm committing to this and I'm fully all in, and then you commit to that thing and it happens, it actualizes, and then after that you're like, done. Or you don't, it's almost like you only choose once. It's this like one choice universe where you only fully commit once, and then after that you don't commit to anything. So what if that changed? What if you chose something different? What if you actually looked at creating something different, creating in a way where you are actually the energy of choosing all the time, where you are fully committed to your life 100%. And you are that energy of like, no matter what it's required of me, I'm doing this. And that is like fully committing. And how, like, it's kind of cool to see it in my own life, and I'm sure for anyone else, is that that energy, the time or the few times in your life where you fully committed to something. I remember another time, I was actually working as a bike courier in London, England, and ended up, it was November, it was getting cold, it wasn't that much fun to be in London anymore. And I ended up having an injury, so I couldn't really ride my bike, and I had a connection to go work in Portugal. And previously that connection never was really panning out. And then I'm like, okay, I'm going to go check this out again, see if there's something possible. And so I did. I contacted the person, and they responded, and we had a communication. And within less than a week, I was living and working in Portugal, and ended up staying there for 3.5 years. And it was really interesting because in that moment, there wasn't, I didn't have a lot of money at that particular point in time. And I was actually living in a friend's living room. And she said to me, she's like, well, if this doesn't work out, you still got, if you want your space in the living room back, you can have it. And in my world, that was not an option. That was, to me, that was like a back door. And I'm like, no, this is happening no matter what it takes. And I didn't know what it took. Like, I couldn't put it into words per se, but it was really the energy of like, no, this is happening no matter what. I'm going to make this happen, however it has to show up. And it did. I made it happen. And that's the energy of choosing. That's like being all in. There was no like, oh, if it doesn't work out, I'm going to go to plan B, I'm going to go plan C, I'm going to go plan D, I'm going to, all the way down. And you have all these other backups, basically. And instead of having that wasn't there. And so it's funny, like looking at a few events in my life, those were, that was a pretty prominent event in my life, and something that I can look back at, and it was a noticeable place where I actually chose. And so looking at that, how many times have you done it in your life? And has it only been a few times? Are you most of the time not fully in when you choose, and you're kind of like, whatever, don't really care, or it doesn't really matter, or, if it doesn't work out, I've got all these other options that, may or may not be something that I want to look at. And so, which isn't fully committing. And what if you like really showed up in a completely different way and really like, okay, so this is what I'm choosing. This is what I'm going to create. You can do it in all kinds of places in your life. I know a really one that's easy to see is money. And I know even for me, like I look at things, I look at how I choose small and I can choose way more. But also when I actually do choose, I'm like, okay, this is going to happen. This is required. And I don't actually know the hows of everything. I'm just like, okay, this is what I'm choosing. And it's interesting, then things just start to show up. And you don't actually even realize it necessarily in the moment. You just like, things are just happening, and you keep on choosing, and something is light, and I'm going to choose that, and it's going to create more, and so on and so forth. And you keep on going with that. And what if you didn't just to choose it once in a while? And this is, I think, the thing that shows up for a lot of people, where they do fully commit to something, and they know exactly what that's like, and then they don't do it again. It's like, yeah, been there, done that, but it doesn't actually create more in your life to only choose it once or twice or 3 times or whatever. Really, imagine what your life would be like if you chose it all the time. If you just would be like looking at something and then, okay, I'm going to actually fully choose that. Whatever that looks like, whatever it takes, I'm all in. I'm actually going to choose that. What if we did that with everything? And it doesn't need to be a so-called big choice. It could be something on a smaller scale. like a smaller choice, because it's really all these tiny little choices that we consider tiny, but may not be tiny, that actually create more. They actually create what we now call our life and living. It's all those little pieces, it's all those little things that you choose every day. You know, as simple as like, hey, what am I gonna choose this morning? What, when you're out shopping, what toothpaste am I gonna choose? Like they seem so kind of unimportant decisions, yet all your tiny little decisions end up creating this thing called your life and your living. And so if you start looking at each single choice and you're like, yeah, I'm going to fully commit to this. This is what I'm choosing. And how much different would your life be? Like, really, how much different would it be? If you just take a moment right now and you looked at the energy of really choosing and looking at that in your life when you chose that, and then you actually implemented that to your life and living every single day, that you fully commit to you. Now, do you get the sense of a different energy, what that would be like? If you really look at it, it's like, wow, if I truly committed to me, what would my life look like? Well, how much would my world actually change? And maybe for some people, they don't like that much change. But what if change is actually what got you out of bed in the morning and actually gave you a sense of excitement and a sense of like something new happening in your world? What if that actually created more? And what if you're willing to have more change in your world? And by fully committing and choosing to all that you choose, what could you actually be or do that you've never been or done before? And how exciting would that actually be? Like, how much fun would that be? Instead of just like, going through your life and kind of like, I'm just going to change. I'm just going to choose once in a while. And then, it's good enough. And then I'll stop choosing, really fully committing, and I'll be halfway in and out, and I'll sit on the fence half the time. And, I'll stare at my belly button for a while and see what happens. Well, it will create a certain way of living. And could you just be so much more? What if you actually chose so much more of you? What if that's actually what choosing is choosing totally for you, choosing to be all of you and showing up as all of you, instead of just showing up as a part or a toe that you dip into the pond of possibility or the pond of choice, and you just dip it in. You're like, yeah, it's a little cold today. Maybe I'm not going to go in. Or it's a little bit too warm. Yeah, it's not really to my liking. I'm not going to commit. I'll just put my little toe in. What if it didn't matter what the water temperature was? What if you could just choose and be fully in all the time? How different would your world show up? And maybe you don't want to actually choose that. Maybe you just are happy with where you are in your life. And it's really interesting when I look at that, I'm aware of how many people are kind of bored in their life and are not so excited and would like more for their world, and also almost never commit to themselves, never fully choose, or never fully all in, or only partially in, or a fraction in, or whatever it may be, in everything that they choose. So what if just changing that one thing would change your world? What if changing just that one thing to choose to be you, all of you, all the time, fully in, no matter what it looks like, no matter what shows up, you just choose that over and over and over again? And what would that create in your world? And really, how much fun can you have with it? Like, it is really like, okay, so I'm going to fully commit to this And it may in your world be like a bit of a freak out and like a little uncomfortable, because you don't actually know how it's going to show up. And you probably sometimes, somewhere along the ways, maybe doubt that it will show up in some sort of way. So what if there wasn't that, and you're just like, no, there's no doubt. I'm fully choosing this. I'm fully committed. It's going to show up. I may not know exactly how, but I do know it will in some sort of way. And it may not show up instantly. It may take a moment or two, or maybe not. It may actually be instant. So if you didn't have any points of views, you didn't have any expectations of it showing up in any particular way, what truly is possible? And how much fun could you have with playing with it and following the energy of being aware of like, oh, that choice, that the energy of that choice is there. I'm going to choose more. I'm going to keep on following this because I know it's going to contribute to that commitment that I made to me and that choice that I made to me. And it's also being aware of that shows up all the time, every day. And you have to keep on choosing and following that energy and following that choice so that it does actually actualize and it does actually create in a way that it may never have before. Yeah, it's totally asking the universe and demanding of oneself. Thank you. It is really that. It is that demand, and it's that biggest thing of like fully choosing something. And what else would be possible in your world if you actually chose that? So my ask today of you is, of everyone that is watching this and will watch this in the future, is what one thing can you start with today in this very moment? What can you fully commit to actually start doing this? Because it's the starting point that kills most people. It's the thought of creating something and then like then all this other stuff shows up in their world that prevents us from actually choosing it. So what is one thing in your world in this very moment that you know that you could fully choose and commit to? And what if you actually took that one thing and actually chose to commit to it? And really commit and not have that energy of like, oh, it may not work out. If you have that energy anywhere, just like destroy and uncreate that energy and really look at like, if I fully chose this, what would be possible? And then actually choosing it. And it may be something small, it may be something tiny, or it may be something more noticeable in your world or more substantial in your world. Like, I'm going to choose to do this different job or whatever it may be, or I'll choose to do this particular course, or I'm going to choose to do something particular with my body. I might choose to commit to running, every week, 3 times a week or something like that you've never actually committed to or chosen to, or that you give up on. It can be all kinds of choices. It can be choosing to committing to be more aware and like fully choosing that and fully committing to it. It's like, okay, whatever it takes. And something like that is not super tangible necessarily, so it can show up in all kinds of ways. But it's this commitment that you choose, this commitment to you to fully committing to whatever it is and seeing what shows up and not having a fixed point of view about how it has to show up. And play with that and really see what else is possible. What else is possible in your world? And the cool thing is when you actually start doing this and you choose over and over and you fully commit to your life, and I get excited and I keep on hitting my computer, what does show up in your world? And what does that do for people around you? There's this thing that's interesting, that whenever you actually choose for you and you be more of you, there is this, people notice that. People will become aware of that. And to them, they may say it shows up in all kinds of ways. One way it can show up is that it seems like you're really confident, which is true, because this thing with confidence is this thing that you actually don't have doubt in your world. So it is really, when you fully choose something, there is actually no doubt. You fully know it's there, and there is no doubt. And so it creates this energy of like, this is happening. And people respond to that energy. People are aware of it. And what kind of invitation can you be by being that energy that could create more in ways that you may never ever see, in ways that you may not find out until years later, that something that you chose inspired somebody to choose something different in their life. So you're really being an invitation to the rest of the world to choose more of them. And how much could that change things in this world? And what else is possible? And it's really also, the other thing that kind of is just showing up for me is like, it's being a leader of your own life. That you're going somewhere and somebody may go there or not, it doesn't matter, but you're going there, and whatever it takes. And it's really choosing for you. And again, like, it's this this space of really looking at anything and everything and going, okay, so what would I like to choose? And whatever you like to choose, fully actually choose it and commit to it. And it doesn't mean that you can't change it at some point, but be all fully in, be all in, and actually choose, and then see what happens. And so that's my invitation for you, to actually play with this, even if it's just one thing to start with, and then see each time, what else can I do? Where else am I not fully committed? And what would it take? What would show up different if I actually fully committed to something and fully chose it? And what if I did that with every single choice? So that's really what I wanted to chat about. And thank you everyone for being here and contributing your energy and being part of this episode 33 on what does choice look like. And play with it and let me know what some of your choices are and what you haven't chosen, or what you actually can choose and have chosen and are looking to play with, to fully commit to, in a place that you maybe haven't. So thank you very much for everyone for joining. We'll see you again soon. I won't have a long time frame like I did this last time between episodes. The next one will be next week, and it might even be before then. So have an awesome week, everyone, and we'll see you soon. Bye.